All right, welcome to Hoopstracker. It is playoff time. But before we get jumping into the playoffs, we've had a ton of questions about CHSAA's RPI. And so we wanted to go through and explain it today and how the RPI works, how does the seeding work, etc. So without further ado, let's jump into the CHSAA RPI ranking. So what is an RPI formula? Where did it come from? RPI is just stands for rating percentage index. This is all on the CHSAA website. We took that information, but the RPI, it's basically a way of setting up a ranking system if teams do not play each other. CHSAA, about 10 or 12 years ago, got interested in this. In 2015, they implemented this. They used to have a basketball committee that would basically help balance out, make sure that you don't get a number one seed who has a couple of out-of-state losses ranked as number 7 or 10, or like last year, I believe Holy Family Boys were ranked 15 or 16, and they made a run to the state championship and won. So that's what the RPI formula. Let's look specifically at the RPI formula because RPIs are used for colleges, but the formula is different than what CHSAA uses. The CHSAA formula is this. It's based on your winning percentage, it's based on your opponent's winning percentage, and then your opponent's winning percentage. Now, is there really a big advantage? It's one way to rank, it's one way to help, and we'll dive into some of that later. But 30% is based on your winning percentage, 40% is based on your opponent's winning percentage, and then 30% is your opponent's winning percentage. So we'll dive in and just take a quick look. Here's, the data is used. So there's a couple of things that happen in the RPI formula. So they count all games, all regular season games, except games against non-varsity opponents or non-member schools. So that might be a prep school or a private school that doesn't play in the NFHS system. Now, where is the RPI standings published? As I mentioned, here we go. CHSAA RPI standings is chsanow.com. They make a comment here about if there's anything published anywhere else, like other rankings, those are not what CHSAA uses. This is what CHSAA uses. So we're going to stay focused on that. As we mentioned, here's the definition, right? So you divide, right? Your winning percentage is divide your number of wins by the total number of games you played this year, right? And a tie is worth half a win. Your opponent's winning percentage is basically the same thing, but it's not calculated via the combined record of the opponents, just the average. And the opponents, very similar as described above. Now, there's this other ranking. So when CHSAA first started, they actually used Max Preps, their own ranking, and Packard ranking. Now, CHSAA's ranking is really more like coaches' voting poll, stuff like that. But the Packard ranking, Dr. Eric Packard, he is a math professor out at Colorado Mesa. He started developing these formulas as a fan 24 years ago. And in my opinion, these have been the most accurate for rankings, period. His formula obviously is his own recipe, but where could you find them? You can go to PackardPowerRankings.com. Who uses it? Actually, a majority of the high school coaches are very much aware of the Packard rankings and they follow them. And of course, all of us basketball junkies really like it. Now, let's take a closer look at the rankings. So one of the things a lot of people ask, hey, on the RPI, so let's jump on the CHSAA website and let's take a quick glance at here's the finalized for the boys, right? Here's the finalized data for the boys and what that looks like. So if you scroll down, you can see 6A, right? You have Fruita Monument, undefeated. Here's their RPI rating. Here's a normalized max preps rating. And then there's a normalized number. And as you can tell, this final calculation is how the seeding is set. So for example, you see teams like Eagle Crest, Smoky Hill, Valor's in the Jeffco League, Rock Canyon, Thunder Ridge, and Mountain Vista are all in the Continental League, and like Shap, Smoky Hill, Eagle Crest, they're coming from the Centennial League. Now, as these rankings are set up, how CHSAA has tried to do this is the general rule of thumb is these numbers are what you get, and this is where they're at. The challenge is that if, let's say, for example, Smoky Hill and Eagle Crest were set up to play in the first round. Because they're in the same league, CHSAA tries to avoid first round league matchups. So as we scroll down, you can actually see, right, Northfield got the #1 seed in Class 5A. Congrats to Coach for doing that. Vista Peak 2, Windsor 3, Mesa Ridge 4, Silver Creek 5. Lewis Palmer got 6. This is a great way to see how they come up with this. Like in 4A, right? Kent Denver for the second year in a row gets the #1 seed. Resurrection Christian gets the 2 seed, even though Resurrection Christian's 2 losses are against Lutheran and Kent Denver, I believe. So it's interesting. So one of the things is if there's a head-to-head matchup, and we'll get to this as we scroll down, let's say down here in the girls, right? So for example, you look at the seeding, right? Now, what's interesting is if you looked at the RPI index itself, which we'll jump over to the RPI index. So here for girls basketball 6A in the RPI index, this is CHSAA's RPI that gets factored with the max preps. You have Cherry Creek, who is #1. Cherokee Trail is #2. The challenge is Cherokee Trail has played Cherry Creek twice and has beat them twice. So I'm not quite sure, this is where some of the flaws come in as to where things are at. And then let's look at last year's state champion, Grandview. They're 13-10. They're ranked #9, but they have 2 losses in state, I believe, to Cherokee Trail. And they have 1 loss, I think Mullen beat them one night. So they have 3 losses in state. Now, Cherokee Trail's only 2 losses are in state. Cherokee Creek has 2 losses in state, but yet they're the #1 seed. So this is where you start diving into the details, and that's why CHSAA uses their formula and max preps. I'm a big fan. I don't know why they removed the Packard formula from before, but I'm a huge fan of the Packard formula. It's great predictions. Now, why does this matter, right? So, for example, right, you see Grandview is the #9 seed, and you see Fruita Monument is the #8 seed. Well, Grandview and Fruita Monument are going to play each other. Now, is Grandview really a 9 seed? Time will tell. We'll see if they get past. But you might have a matchup like, for example, Grandview and Mullen that might come about in the Sweet 16 after the first round of the playoffs. Both of those teams are top teams, in my opinion. But, this is where the formula and things like that. And I've spoken with a handful of coaches from other states, and they don't even use an RPI formula. They set up a region, a bracket, you go. The top 4 teams make it to the Final 4. So it's kind of interesting how CHSAA is, I think they're at the forefront of a lot of the NFHS schools on this RPI ranking. So with that, that's how the ranking works. That's how the seeding works. We hope everyone is excited about the playoffs coming, but hopefully that gave you a little insight on how that works. Now, last thing is, from talking with CHSAA, when you get down to the end of the season, will one win really make a difference depending on how you move up? And the question is, it might, but probably unlikely. You would have to play maybe a top seed to get knocked off, or to get to move up. You'd have to play maybe a really good team that's got a higher ranking and a higher percentage to maybe slide it up, but it's normalized, meaning it's kind of an average. It's not a mean, it's an average. And so, that one win might move you up like maybe a half a point or something, but it's not going to move you up a whole slot or two. We wish all the teams a good luck in the playoffs. We are excited. We're going to do our big playoff show breaking down the top teams, but we hope everyone has a great week, and good luck to all the teams in the playoffs.